Welcome to While We Were Distracted, the podcast where we explore topics that often get overshadowed in the rush of daily life.
Look around you right now, just, wherever you are. You're probably sitting within range of, like, a Wi-Fi router, or maybe a cellular tower, or at least a Bluetooth signal.
Oh, almost certainly.
Right. And we trust this invisible architecture with our lives, basically. We have this baseline assumption that this invisible ocean of frequencies is benign, that it's just there to stream our music or send text messages, route our GPS,
Yeah, it's just utility to us.
Exactly. But what if the very infrastructure we use to navigate our daily lives was secretly engineered to hold a loaded invisible weapon to your head?
It's a terrifying thought.
It really is. So, welcome to today's deep dive. I am thrilled you are here because today we are looking at a document that really it forces you to question the invisible systems you rely on every single second.
It really does. It is an incredibly challenging, dense read, and it takes you down a very, very unexpected path.
That is putting it mildly. I mean, we are looking at a highly detailed, extremely provocative document. It's titled whistleblowerdisclosure.pdf.
Catchy title, right?
Yeah, very to the point. And it was authored by an individual named Daniel R. Azoulay, and it is dated today, April 6, 2026.
Fresh off the press.
Right. Now, I want to be incredibly clear right up front. The material in this document contains explosive, politically, and institutionally charged claims. We are not here to take sides or validate or, endorse these allegations.
Absolutely not, no.
Our mission is strictly to unpack the contents of this document impartially. We just want to help you understand exactly what the author is presenting to the world.
Right, and if we're looking at the architecture of Azoulay's argument, the document frames itself as an urgent whistleblower disclosure. He is essentially sending up a flare,
Like a massive red flag.
Exactly. He's demanding independent technical validation and international oversight for what he categorizes as potential crimes against humanity.
Which is a huge phrase to use.
It is. And to understand his argument, we really have to look at the three pillars his claim rests on. So that's severe regulatory breaches, the existence of unauthorized, hidden signal modulations within commercial networks, and the classified transfer of military technology into the civilian telecommunications industry.
Okay, let's unpack this. What is the core thesis here? Azoulay is alleging that legacy military-directed energy technologies and neuroweapons have been covertly embedded directly into our civilian 4G and LTE sub-6 gigahertz telecommunications infrastructure.
Which is, a massive claim.
A massive claim. So to understand how Azoulay argues this actually happened, I think we have to look at who the document points to. Like, how does military-grade hardware end up in the cell tower down your street?
Well, Azoulay points the finger directly at a specific network of defense contractors. He anchors his claim on a U.S. Army program called Titan.
Titan.
Yeah, that stands for Tactical Intelligence Targeting Access Node. It's an AI-driven system, and it's designed for multi-domain sensing, massive data fusion, and autonomous targeting on the battlefield.
So serious battlefield tech.
Very serious. And the prime contractors involved, they read like a who's who of defense giants. Azoulay lists Northrop Grumman, L3 Harris, Palantir, Anduril, and BAE Systems.
Wait, hold on. Titan is designed for battlefield targeting, right?
Right.
Are you telling me Azoulay thinks the Department of Defense is plugging battlefield multi-domain sensors into the exact same tower that routes my food delivery order?
That's the allegation, yeah.
But that seems like a massive logistical leap. I mean, what is the bridge between an active war zone and a quiet suburb?
So the bridge, according to the document, is the corporate overlap. Azoulay is claiming a direct pipeline exists because these same firms, companies like Palantir and Anduril that build the AI-driven battlefield logic, and hardware giants like L3 Harris, they are simultaneously involved in developing 4G and LTE applications.
I see.
Yeah, he alleges that the firewalls between military electronic warfare capabilities and civilian telecom infrastructure simply do not exist because, well, the identical corporate entities are building both systems at the exact same time.
It sounds like the author is suggesting our civilian cell networks are built on a dual-use chassis. Like discovering the commercial drone you bought for photography secretly contains targeting software from a military stealth bomber.
That's a really good analogy, actually. Yeah.
But he traces the lineage of this tech back quite a ways, doesn't he? I mean, this isn't just a sudden overnight development.
No, not at all. If we connect this to the bigger picture, Azoulay provides a historical roadmap. The document tracks the evolution of specific intellectual property, starting with a company called Waveband Corporation back in the early 2000s.
Okay, waveband.
Yeah, Waveband specialized in RF and antenna tech, but they were deeply associated with a concept called many-user.
Which is an acronym, predominantly.
Yes, it stands for a directed energy sister using pulsed microwaves to induce auditory effects.
Wow.
It relies on a well-documented biological phenomenon called the Frey effect, or the microwave auditory effect.
Break that down for me. I mean, how does a microwave pulse turn into a sound?
It's pretty wild. When specific rapid pulses of radio frequencies hit the human head, they cause a microscopic rapid heating of the brain tissue.
Okay, that sounds bad.
Yeah, and this sudden thermoelastic expansion creates an acoustic wave inside the skull. So the person literally hears clicks, buzzing, or even speech, but it completely bypasses the ears.
Wait, really?
Yeah, the sound is generated inside the head itself.
That is genuinely unsettling. You're saying the sound isn't in the room at all. It's a physical reaction inside the skull of the target.
That is the science behind the Frey effect, yes. Now, according to Azuli's disclosure, Waveband was acquired by Sierra Nevada Corporation, or SNC, back in 2005.
Okay.
And the document claims the intellectual property from the Medusa project was integrated into SNC's defense portfolio, which is heavily focused on electronic warfare.
So it got absorbed into the bigger defense machine.
Exactly. Azuli's core historical allegation is that these legacy many-user technologies evolved over the last 2 decades into advanced neurological targeting systems. Systems that now operate perfectly within our everyday frequency bands.
Which brings us to the actual mechanism, I guess.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the physics of this, or at least how Azuli claims the physics work.
Sure.
Because a military stealth system and a regular cell phone tower are functionally different beasts. If a defense contractor is building targeting software, how do you mathematically squeeze that into the exact same frequency my phone uses to stream a video?
Well, it all happens in what the document calls the sub-6 gigahertz battleground.
Sub-6 gigahertz.
Right. Azule specifically highlights the frequency range from 600 megahertz up to 6 gigahertz. These are the exact frequencies heavily utilized for commercial 4G and LTE networks globally.
Right. It's the absolute sweet spot for getting data through the air to our devices.
But Azule claims these identical frequencies are also the primary playground for classified DoD-directed energy research, specifically research focused on cognitive disruption.
Okay, wait. I have to stop you there and play devil's advocate for a second.
Go for it.
If these anomalous weaponized signals are running on commercial 4G frequencies, wouldn't that be immediately obvious to telecom engineers? I mean, people constantly monitor these networks for interference to keep our calls from dropping. Wouldn't someone checking the spectrum just see a massive spike in energy and flag it as a glitch or a cyber attack?
That is a very logical counterargument, and Azule actually dedicates a significant portion of the text to addressing it. He claims these signals are not just, crude, massive blasts of energy that would trigger an alarm.
Okay. So how do they hide?
They utilize something called adaptive beamforming algorithms combined with multipath propagation.
That is a mouthful.
It is. But these are techniques originally developed for military electronic warfare, where the entire goal is to hide your signal within the ambient noise, evade detection, and penetrate complex physical defenses.
Wait, multipath propagation. Break that down for me in plain English. How exactly does a radio wave hide or bypass a physical barricade?
Okay, imagine throwing a handful of bouncy balls down a hallway full of obstacles.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Instead of throwing them in one straight line where they would just hit a wall and stop, beamforming and multipath propagation calculate exactly how to bounce the signal off the walls, the floor, and the ceiling.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the energy scatters, bounces around the obstacles, and then regathers precisely where the target is standing. It is effectively stepping around the barricade rather than trying to blast through it.
So it's like a mathematically perfectly calculated trick shot using radio waves.
Precisely. And Azule points directly to a specific patent to back this up. He cites BAE Systems' European patent EP3 581875A, which is titled Apparatus for a Directed Energy Weapon.
Okay, so he's bringing the receipts.
Yeah. According to his interpretation of this patent, it details the exact technology that allows sub-6 gigahertz directed energy to bypass physical shielding.
Wait, when you say shielding, you mean things designed to block radio waves, right? Like lead paint or a basic Faraday cage?
Yes, standard partial Faraday cages, RF blocking paint, or metal mesh. The document alleges that because of these multipath tricks, the signal finds a way through conventional, everyday barriers.
I want to pause on that for a second because of what that means for your everyday environment. Like when you're feeling overwhelmed, your instinct is to go home, shut the door, close the blinds, and just disconnect.
Right.
But Azulay is making the chilling assertion that because of these shielding, penetrating waveforms, if someone is targeted by this, they cannot find relief simply by going indoors. The signal bounces around the walls until it finds you. He claims you would need to build a complete, structurally perfect, full-scale Faraday cage just to get a good night's sleep.
Yeah, and that really bridges the gap between the theoretical technology and the deeply distressing human impact he's describing in the text.
But, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. See, here's where it gets really interesting. What actual proof does Azulay provide in this disclosure? We've discussed patents and corporate acquisitions, but what about the hard data? If he wants international oversight, he needs real proof.
He does. And he outlines a suite of systemic evidence that he claims to possess and is ready to hand over to independent auditors. First, he points to SDR, or software-defined radio IQ streams.
Unpack SDR for me, software-defined radio. Why is that strong evidence?
Well, traditional radios use hardwired circuits to tune into a frequency, but software-defined radio uses software to capture massive raw chunks of the radio spectrum all at once. It allows you to analyze every tiny fluctuation in the data.
Oh, so it's much more granular.
Exactly. Azulay claims his SDR streams show live, unauthorized, highly complex modulations occurring right now in 4G and LTE networks, specifically at 1.7, 1.8, and 2.5 gigahertz.
Those are frequencies we use constantly for mobile data.
Which is why his next claim is so critical. He highlights a highly technical anomaly in the 2.5 gigahertz band, specifically in the uplink portion of channel 7.
Okay, uplink meaning the signal going from your phone back up to the cell tower.
Right. But Azulay claims his equipment has measured signals coming from the tower down to the ground that are spoofing or mathematically cloning an uplink signal.
So a tower pretending to be a phone.
Yes. Furthermore, he points out that this specific civilian frequency band overlaps directly with military channel 41. The allegation is that the network is artificially prioritizing this hidden cognitive targeting signal over the lawful, normal use of mobile frequencies. It's an impossible mobile phone frequency selection.
Basically, the network is breaking its own architectural rules to prioritize a hidden military signal over your text messages.
That is the technical allegation, yeah. And then Azulay moves from network data to human measurements. The document details paradoxical frequency measurements taken physically near human heads.
How is a measurement paradoxical? Like, what is he seeing that shouldn't be happening?
Well, and you put your phone to your ear, you expect that signal to radiate outward into the environment, right? You get a relatively wide distribution of frequencies dissipating into the air.
Sure.
But Azulay claims to have captured a very tight, highly concentrated frequency distribution anchored in 3 distinct center frequencies, specifically hovering near human heads, both indoors and outdoors. Yeah, the implication is that energy is not radiating away from a device, but rather being beamed and converged onto the biological target from an external source.
That paints a really vivid, almost predatory picture. And from those physical spectrum measurements, Azulay pivots to a deeply personal narrative. I mean, this is not just an academic exercise for him.
No, not at all. The document makes it abundantly clear that Azulay considers himself a primary target of this very infrastructure.
Yeah, the disclosure details severe active interference in his life. He claims his devices were infected with Pegasus spyware, which, for context, is highly sophisticated zero-click military-grade spyware usually reserved for targeting international terrorists and high-level dissidents, not independent telecom researchers.
Right. It's not something you just accidentally download.
No. He also alleges email interference, data falsification, and physical mail and parcel theft. It reads like a coordinated harassment campaign designed to just bankrupt his research.
And the allegations then escalate to severe physical harm. Azulay states that he presented at a hospital with extensive, debilitating neurological symptoms. He explicitly compares his physical state to what is publicly known as Havana syndrome.
The anomalous health incidents involving vertigo, cognitive fog, cranial pressure, the stuff reported by diplomats.
Exactly. But according to his document, the medical staff completely dismissed him. They categorized him as suffering from psychosis and refused to investigate the physical, environmental causes of his symptoms.
And the timeline Azulay provides regarding this hospitalization is critical to understanding his sense of urgency.
Very much so.
It was exactly 48 hours. He claims this dismissal at the hospital occurred exactly 48 hours after he sent an academic article detailing the weaponization of 5G and AI directly to government officials.
This raises an important question about how we process this type of whistleblower document. You know, Azule is intentionally blending highly technical, reproducible data points like the SDR spectrum anomalies and the BAE patent filings with deeply personal, highly distressing anecdotal experiences of being gang-stalked and medically gaslit.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. He's providing technical blueprints, but he's also speaking from the perspective of an alleged victim, demanding that independent technical bodies verify his data because traditional authorities simply will not listen to his story.
Which naturally leads to the next massive logistical question. If these adaptive modulations exist, if these signals are beaming out of commercial towers and bouncing down our hallways, how on earth do they get past global regulatory bodies? How do you hide a literal weapon system inside an international telecommunications standard?
Right. To answer that, Azule points to a specific, highly influential organization, the Alliance for Telecommunications Industry Solutions, or ATIS.
ATIS. I don't think I've ever heard of them.
Most people haven't, but they hold immense foundational power. ATIS is the governing body responsible for developing the core security architectures, the encryption protocols, and the signal modulation standards for both 4G and 5G networks globally.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, if you want to know the exact mathematical language cell networks use to talk to each other securely, ATIS writes that dictionary.
So ATIS is basically writing the global rulebook, and ATIS focuses intensely on who exactly is sitting at the table when those rules are written.
According to his disclosure, the ATIS Board of Directors has historically included high-ranking officials from DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, the Department of Defense, the U.S. Navy, and weapons and signals intelligence experts from the CIA.
That is wild. That is like finding out the guy writing the safety regulations for your bank vault also happens to moonlight as a professional safecracker for a black ops agency. You have the top military and intelligence agencies sitting in the boardroom where civilian telecommunications standards are drafted. So what does this all mean for the baseline security of our networks?
Well, Azule synthesizes this corporate and governmental overlap into a deeply concerning conclusion. The document alleges that the presence of military and intelligence leadership on the ATIS board was not just advisory. His claim is that this influence allowed for the systemic embedding of dual-use vulnerabilities, or offensive backdoors, directly into the global telecommunications protocols from day one.
So if the backdoor is part of the standard, it's not a bug, it's a feature. It doesn't look like a hack. It looks like the system operating normally.
That is the crux of the ATIS allegation. By writing the rules, they allegedly ensured that adaptive modulations, the exact kind needed to deliver directed energy payloads through a cell tower, were fundamentally built into the foundation of the network, completely bypassing public safety oversight.
Wow, okay. That is a heavy, intense narrative to navigate. We are looking at a document that alleges a total ground-up compromise of the infrastructure that runs modern society. So if everything is as compromised as he says, what is Azule actually asking for? What's a tangible call to action here?
His demands are sweeping, and he frames them as incredibly urgent. First, he's calling for immediate independent forensic audits of 4G and LTE base stations. He wants technicians to go out with SDR equipment and look for these specific unauthorized modulations and shielding penetrating waveforms on Channel 7.
He wants boots on the ground auditing the tower.
Right. Furthermore, he is demanding congressional hearings to investigate the collaboration between the DoD and telecom companies. He wants subpoenas issued for the internal records of contractors like Palantir, Endural, and BAE Systems regarding their dual-use AI and targeting programs.
He's going directly after the corporate pipeline we discussed earlier.
Exactly. And at the absolute highest level, Azule is calling for international intervention by the United Nations, the World Health Organization, and the International Criminal Court. He alleges that exposing civilian populations to weaponized neurological RF signals without their knowledge or consent is a direct violation of the Nuremberg Code and the Geneva Protocol.
Wow.
Yeah, he is framing this entirely as a severe human rights crisis, not just a telecommunications glitch.
You know, for you listening right now, I want to acknowledge that unpacking a document like this is intense. We are looking at claims that fundamentally challenge the safety of the world around you. But there is a massive value in understanding these whistleblower texts, regardless of validation, because they highlight the profound anxieties that exist right beneath the surface of our society.
That's a really good point.
We are living in a moment where autonomous AI, classified military technology, and ubiquitous consumer electronics are bleeding into each other at breakneck speed. Documents like Asley's give a very sharp voice to the underlying fear that we are losing control of the very tools we rely on to live.
The implications of the text certainly force a reevaluation of our relationship with this ambient technology, which brings up a completely different philosophical issue that Asley's document flirts with but doesn't explicitly resolve.
What's that?
Well, the document states that partial RF shielding is totally ineffective, leaving a full Faraday cage as the only defense against these alleged signals. But it makes you wonder. In a world where cellular connectivity dictates our financial, social, and professional lives, does retreating into a total Faraday cage protect you from society? Or does it effectively erase your ability to participate in it entirely?
That is a phenomenal point. In the digital age, where does the consumer end and the collateral damage begin? If the terms of service for participating in modern society inherently include exposure to classified algorithms, the entire concept of informed consent is completely obliterated.
It creates a reality where simply stepping outside your front door makes you an unwitting participant in an ongoing experiment you never signed up for.
That is a haunting thought to leave you with, and an entirely new way to look at the terms and conditions we blindly scroll past. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We navigated some incredibly complex, heavy material today. We encourage you to keep asking these tough questions, keep analyzing the source material for yourself, and keep looking critically at the invisible technology surrounding you every single day.
Don't forget to like and subscribe for the next episode on While We Were Distracted.